Thyme tincture is a great one to make right now while thyme is growing in the garden and is available fresh in grocery stores, or if you grow it on your windowsill all year round, you can make this whenever you want. Thyme has lots of compounds in it that can help fight off bacteria and viruses, and it's a good one for helping to ease coughs and support your overall respiratory health. I like to prepare this one right now. We're in July. I like to get it ready now, so I have it ready for September, October time frame when colds and flus really start to kick up again. I recently put this thyme tincture recipe on my website, but somehow accidentally deleted half the photographs I took for the blog post by mistake. And so today I decided to reshoot those while I make this video. So that's what you're going to be seeing me do throughout this video, is switch from making the tincture and then also photographing it. So I live in the UK and this summer has been extremely wet and cold. That has meant that slugs and snails have destroyed everything in my garden and lots of other people's gardens as well. It's been a brutal year for gardening. And so I went to the supermarket recently and bought one of those little packs of thyme that you can get, and have just been trying to tend to that inside and not have it outside this year. I'm just going to use that thyme that I bought from the supermarket to make this tincture. I really like how you can go to the supermarket and either buy thyme dried, or like I did, this fresh thyme, and really be intentional about how you cultivate it. So I have repotted the thyme that I bought in the supermarket and have been using it in cooking, but I've also decided to tincture it, which means that I will be preserving the beneficial compounds in this plant for much longer than they would last if I just use this plant fresh. This thyme tincture is a great one for the summer, and if you're interested in learning more great tincture recipes to try out this summer, I will link a guide that I developed that has really simple recipes for beginners that outlines 6 summer tinctures that you could try your hand at. I'll link that in the description below. I began making this thyme tincture by adding fresh thyme to a glass jar. I made sure that the thyme I put in the jar was clean and removed any pieces that weren't so fresh. I just threw the stems right in there as well instead of removing the leaves from the stems. You can of course use dried thyme to make this, and if you're using dried, you would fill your glass jar about 1/3 of the way full. I'm using fresh, and I really should have used more. I should have filled the jar almost to the top, but I didn't have any more and I still wanted to make this tincture, so I'm just using what I have. Then you cover the thyme with alcohol. If you're like me and using fresh, I recommend using a higher proof alcohol. Again, I'm just using what I had. I had 80 proof alcohol on hand, and you can kind of get away with it because thyme doesn't have a ton of water content in it. But if you're making something like calendula tincture or mullein tincture, you definitely want to use a higher proof alcohol like Everclear to offset the potential that the water content would make your tincture spoil more quickly. So after everything's completely covered in alcohol, put a lid on it and label it and date it. I'm not doing that here because I'm going to strain it off right away just to show you the process. And then after I do this video, put everything back in the glass jar to let it steep a little bit longer. If you use dry thyme, make sure to let it sit for a day or so and then top it up again with alcohol to make sure that that thyme remains under the alcohol. When you use dried herbs, they will absorb the alcohol, and so you usually have to top up your tincture the day after you make it. Then I like to let it sit for about 6 to 8 weeks. I usually go a full 8 weeks on my tinctures, and then you would just strain off the tincture using cheesecloth or a strainer. Sometimes I use a tea strainer. Use what you have. You can use a coffee filter as well. It just takes a bit longer. And then add it to your bottle. You can also just store it back in your glass jar, or you can invest in these little tincture bottles. Make sure to label your final tincture and date it so you remember what it is. Since thyme is a culinary herb, you don't really have to worry too much about the dosage. I like to take it in the colder months, and I usually do about 1 to 2 droppers at a time to help when I have a cold or a cough. Like most alcohol-based extracts and tinctures, this will last a super long time. Alcohol is a great preservative. If everything is strained off from your final tincture, it should last about 1 to 2 years or longer. I like to add this tincture into my dose of fire cider that I make in the winter, or you can add the dosage to a cup of herbal tea. But usually, to be honest, I just take the tincture directly under my tongue, hold it there for a few seconds, and then swallow. It just is the quickest way to get access to the beneficial compounds in tinctures, is to take them under your tongue. So I hope you give this tincture a try. I will link the guide with 6 summer tinctures that are super simple to make down in the description below. And if you do make this tincture, please tag me on social media. I'm slowly becoming more active on it. But I would love to see what you're making and hear if you've given this a try. So if I don't hear from you there, I will speak to you in the next video.